Welcome to Behind the Sale, real talk on real estate, your go-to podcast for buying and selling homes right here in Michigan City and Northwest Indiana. I'm Eric Tornes, and in each episode, we'll break down the local market, share expert insights, and give you the real story behind every sale. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in this fast-growing region, we've got the tips, trends, and insider knowledge to help you make the best moves. So hit subscribe and let's get started. All right, welcome everyone. We are back here with Behind the Sale, real talk on real estate. I am your local agent here in Michigan City, Eric Tornes, and I'm joined by Chris Covalle from Origin Point, and we're here at Fluid Coffee. We're going to talk about some of the latest market trends and what that looks like for our buyers and sellers.
Awesome.
Yeah. I appreciate you, Chris. Again, I know you're a busy guy and, taking the time to sit down and kind of get the people informed. So let's talk about what you've seen since the last time we talked. I think we talked, was it back in March?
Yeah, early spring.
Okay, early spring. So, now we're a little bit into 2025. We're going into the month of July, and we've kind of had some insight on where the market kind of lies now at the middle of the year. So, what have you seen? I guess is the big difference from the beginning of the year to where we're at now.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
it's
of
great to be
course.
back doing our second market update here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually kind of put things in a few different buckets. So I would start off, most everyone always starts with what are interest rates. So let's just chat a little bit about that. Overall, interest rates have improved since early in the spring. We're actually just hitting 3-month lows right now. And what are some of the main drivers behind that? Well, in addition to the typical culprits, which are monthly inflation data, jobs reports, another new thing since last time was tariffs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of taken over the main item, what's driving long-term interest rates. Because what's the big concern about tariffs? Well, that might cause prices to go up. That might cause more inflation. What's the number one enemy of long-term mortgage rates? Inflation.
Mhm.
And that's what the Fed's really watching. So the Fed wants to see inflation cool before they're likely to cut the Fed funds rate, which isn't the 30-year fixed rate, but it's all your short-term rates like credit cards, home equity credits, car loans, things like that. So overall, since when tariffs first came out, we saw a pretty decent uptick in pricing. But now that we've kind of seen some weaker data come in the last 2 months to kind of offset that, and we've got another big report tomorrow with the jobs report. Next week's the consumer price index report. Those are the two main reports that the Fed kind of watches out for. So we're seeing a little weaker data come in to help offset what's going on with fears behind tariffs.
Okay.
So like I said, we've just hit 3-month lows. Priced a few loans out this morning, and depending where a buyer is, which if you're a first-time buyer with certain income buckets, you can get under 6.5%. If you're a regular first-time buyer, you're probably looking at mid to higher sixes. So overall,
Okay.
better theme than where we were earlier in the year.
Okay. All right. Now, kind of, you had touched on the tariffs. I mean, do you see any differences? I mean, obviously, with like new home builds versus just existing properties, in these local neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, I think in our market, we don't have these big tract home building sites going on, but there is we've got Discover the More, right? There's a 40 townhome unit going up on right in Long Beach there. That's brand new construction. We've got some, but the bulk of the market's still traditional existing home buys. And we're still fighting inventory. Right?
Okay.
We don't have enough product out there to satisfy the amount of buyers that are out there in the market right now. So while you start seeing some local new construction going on, we're still primarily an existing home market.
Right. And something that we discussed before this and we looked at, I mean, right now, where we're at in Michigan City, we're at about 2.5 months worth of inventory. I think we had seen there was, a decrease in inventory, just a slight decrease this year, correct?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that year over year, we have a little more product than last year. So we do have more sellers that are coming off the fence and putting their place on the market. But to your point, I think you just looked at your report a little bit earlier. Last month versus the prior month, that inventory is starting to come back down a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it's still definitely a tight inventory market.
Okay. All right. I guess what else do you have as far as some of the market data that that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think, it's still competitive, right? There's still a ton of buyers out there that aren't finding the place they want. And when they do, there's oftentimes multiple bids. I think some of the cooler things to talk about are kind of some unique scenarios or unique closings that we've had recently. So
Mm.
there's a couple things I would like to chat about. One is, we got this concern of people that want to move, but they don't want to put their place in the market. They don't want to sell it, and then they can't find a new place.
Hmm.
And they're also concerned about having a contingent offer accepted just because of the competition. A seller is going to look at someone putting a contingency in and say, well, I'm going to take the guy that doesn't have the contingency and not wait
Oh,
for you to
right.
sell your house. So how do we get around that? Well, we have a really innovative program that we just launched this year called Buy Now, Sell Later. So if a client has a home now, they want to buy a new home, but they can't qualify with both payments. We have a portfolio program that will exclude the current housing payment from their debt to income
Oh,
calculation.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it's been great. I've got a recent example of one we just closed where it's an old. This is your other kind of common buyer now. Someone has been in their house for decades sometimes,
Hmm.
and they want to downsize or buy a newer home, and they haven't been through a home purchase in forever, but they're maybe on fixed income, Social Security, pension. We just can't carry the current payment in a new housing payment.
Okay.
But these folks also have a lot of equity in their house. So if we show they have at least 20% equity in their home, have some housing reserves, meaning, they've got some assets that can support carrying that current payment for 6 to 9 months, and that can be retirement assets, doesn't have to be cash. We can exclude that current housing payment from their approval and then go buy a new one. So we had an elderly couple that think they've been in our house 30 years,
Okay.
had a lot of equity in the home, wanted to buy new, couldn't qualify. So what we did was we helped them set up a home equity line of credit on their current house so they could grab the equity from there to use for a down payment on the new one. But we didn't have to count the line of credit in their current debt to income calculations. We didn't have to count their current mortgage or their taxes and insurance. And then they qualified for the new home, plus whatever else is on their credit report. So we closed that in about, I think the closing was a 30-day. I pre-approved them on a Friday. They went under contract that same night.
Jeez.
We started the HELOC application the following Monday. That closed in 2 weeks. And then we closed on their regular purchase in
Okay.
30 days. And they were ecstatic. And now their current place is on the market. And when it sells, they'll pay out that line of credit and take whatever equity they have remaining and possibly redo the new mortgage. So that's a really cool one that I think has been really beneficial in today's market. Another unique scenario we had, and we talk all the time about, again, because of the competition, being able to close quickly. And so a lot of clients that choose to not only get pre-approved, but submit their entire file to underwriting, right? Get
Okay.
fully underwritten. So if they're putting a bid in on a property and there's a multiple bid, they can tell the seller, I can close in 2 weeks. I've already been through underwriting. All I have to do is my appraisal, we'll get my title work, my homeowner insurance, the things you can't do until you're actually under contract. And again, it helps them kind of have a leg up versus the competition.
Okay.
And that speed is also important in other ways. I mean, I had an agent give me a referral May 22nd. They had a buyer whose lender just disappeared, was no longer reachable, no longer able to provide any kind of guidance on getting their home closed. And they were supposed to close June 4th. So I talked to that client May 22nd, and we did our pre-approval that night. Also discovered that while they were previously going FHA, they really shouldn't be. They should be going conventional. It's a better loan strategy for them. So we flipped into a conventional loan, sent them their loan disclosures May 23rd, that Friday, ordered the appraisal, and we closed June 6th. So we closed in 8 business days,
Oh, wow.
from
Okay.
start to finish, and got that client right in there on time. So we can definitely move fast when needed. And I think that's just a super important tool to be out there to stick out versus competition.
Okay. Nice. Um, I guess, is there other programs? I know before we talked about some of the veteran programs that you guys have. Can you just kind of reiterate some of the veteran programs that we're
Yeah, that's
going
okay. When I always like talking about that, it's just a awesome thank you to our veterans, but we waive all of our lender fees on VA loans. So that's our underwriting fee, which is normally $1,640, is just zero. And we have super aggressive VA pricing. So we've definitely been taking advantage of that. I get a lot of VA inquiries. And I really find that, our product and program, it's really hard to beat out there.
Okay. Um, So, what would you say to some of the folks that are, still, waiting for values to go down and, interest rates to drop? I mean, I feel like last year we were talking about, 2025 being a big boom for, buyers, and now we're just kind of, as a real estate agent, it seems a little stagnant, even though the inventory is there. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because remember what we heard a lot last year and even earlier this year. Well, I'm going to wait for rates to come down before I buy.
Mhm.
And some people would say, well, I'm going to wait for prices to come down as well. But we've actually seen, the opposite. So we just talked about this earlier, is that um, the median price in our area from last year to this year has gone up 9%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where have rates gone? Basically nowhere,
Right.
or maybe slightly decreased. But let's say rates had come down, 0.5%. Oh, I'm going to buy now. Well, now you're paying 9% more for the house that you could have bought last year.
Right.
And while you've protected that, you've kind of lost out on that equity that you would have gained in the meantime, and you're really not getting that different of an interest rate. So I think the market dynamics continue to speak to that values really aren't going anywhere. Like worst case, maybe holding steady.
Okay.
But it's pretty rare that we're seeing values decline.
Right.
And again, there's still competition. So a house that comes on a market that's in good shape and priced well, it's going to get looks at it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get something for, you know, 20% off the list price, unless it's just grossly mispriced.
Yeah.
And so, we said it last year, and I think the theme still applies, is that if you want to buy and you can afford where your payment is today, then buy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if rates get better down the road, yes, you can refinance, but you're not going to have missed out on getting that same house for a higher price down
Yeah.
the road and giving up those gains that you would have earned.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, and it's even goes with investing, but a lot of people just sit around and wait for that perfect moment, and
Right.
the perfect moment never comes.
Exactly.
And you're talking about the listing price too. I think was for sellers, I think they're getting 98% of
Yeah.
what they're asking for. So if you have a home for sale, in Michigan City also, we're seeing houses sit for an average of 12 days on the market before there's a contract either accepted or but like you said, there's no perfect time to really
Right.
get into it, and just waiting is just kind of prolongs the whole situation.
Yeah.
But
Another thing I would say is where have rents gone?
yeah. Oh, right. Absolutely.
Rents aren't going anywhere.
Right.
And you've got people that are, I don't know what the average rent per se in our market is, but
Yeah.
a lot of people paying $1,500 for rent,
Uh-huh.
and that's not going down.
Right.
Whereas at the price point that they could potentially buy a house for, they might see their payment actually go down.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. So I always encourage people to at least look at it. Like if you are curious about buying, at least go through a pre-approval process. You
Yeah.
know what numbers actually look like. And if it makes sense for you and it's something we want to do, then you can pursue it. And if it doesn't make sense, at least you know, and
Right.
you just kind of continue on your path or put a game plan together for a little bit further down the road.
Yeah. They so I used to live over in Lake County, and I remember watching, before it was like Griffith that I was staying at, and then I moved to Crown Point. And I mean, even in Crown Point, I was paying, about $2,000 a
Mhm.
month, for rent. And this was back in, 2017, 18. And then I moved to Dyer. That was a similar situation with rental prices. Eventually it was just too much. I made my way up here to Michigan City a couple years ago, and I know I see it on Facebook groups a lot.
Mhm.
People are, upset about the rental
Right.
prices. But when all is said and done, Michigan City has really flown under the radar as far as rental prices, and I'm a renter myself. And I'll tell you, I couldn't be, more happy with what I'm paying for my rent.
Yeah.
But, again, with the development going on here, like you said, rental prices are just going to increase.
Yeah.
So, buying a home might be the better option for somebody,
Yeah,
really.
we still have a wide variety of housing prices in this market.
Yeah.
So it's, depending on where you're looking to buy, there's a lot of selection out there, and it's not always like an expensive ticket to to be able to get into a home.
Right. All right, Chris. Well, that's all the questions I have for you today. Again, I appreciate you taking the time and kind of shedding some light on our market and our, obviously our local market too. We'll be doing this interview again sometime this fall, where we'll touch base and we can kind of keep people posted on what the trends
Yeah,
look like.
that'd
So
be great. I appreciate it. There's always more stories to tell. So we'll see what happens the next few months and where the picture is in the fall. But it's still busy out there. Any questions, always feel free to reach out to Eric or myself. We're certainly always happy to help answer them.
yeah. So, folks, again, if you have a home or somebody looking for a home, feel free to reach out to myself. I work with App Properties, and we work, side by side with Origin Point, and
Yeah.
Chris has been absolutely amazing for my clients. So, any questions, feel free to reach out. My number will be in the link, as in Chris's information will also be there. All right. Until next time.
Thanks, Eric.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all for tuning into the latest episode of Behind the Sale. I'm your host and go-to agent here in Michigan City, Indiana, Eric Tornes. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay updated with the most current market information, including invaluable insights to help you navigate the home buying and selling process. And of course, if you or anyone you know is interested in listing their home and looking to purchase a home here in Northwest Indiana, please reach out to me at the number listed. It's never too early to start researching your next dream home. Until next time.